All right. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name's Carol. I work at Zero V. I have been a staff member at Zero V for about 5 or 6 years. Prior to that, I was an AmeriCorps member at Zero V, and Whitney was my boss at one time too. So I've come full circle, and now I get to work a little bit, not as much as I'd like, get to work a little bit with Whitney, doing things like this. So thank you all for having me, letting me come and talk a little bit about what Zero V is and what the work we do. Um, I'll go ahead and share my screen. I do have a PowerPoint presentation to go through with you all. I'll get that pulled up here. And of course, now it's on my other screen, so I'll be looking over here. I'm sorry if that looks weird. Zero V is we used to be called the Kentucky Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We are the statewide agency that kind of we hold state contracts. We oversee a lot of domestic violence service programming for the state. I'll definitely get into that a little bit about what that means, what kind of things we do at Zero V. But I'm going to start out talking about just what domestic violence is. So we'll get right into it. Um, we define domestic violence as a pattern of behaviors used by one current or former intimate partner to maintain power and control over the other. Some really important words there that we use when we are trying to, determining if someone has been victimized by domestic violence or intimate partner violence. There's a pattern, and it's all about power and control. Domestic violence does not discriminate. While we do end up seeing more female survivors with male perpetrators, we do know that that's not exclusive. It happens to anybody. Um, Nationally, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in her life, but also 1 in 7 men. We see opposite sex relationships result in domestic violence. We see same-sex relationships. It could happen to anybody. 1 in 3 female murder victims are killed by an intimate partner, as well. So we do know that domestic violence is deadly. It can be very, very deadly and very serious. Um, we'll talk about the power and control wheel. This is a tool that is very commonly used in the domestic violence field in trainings like this, just to talk about all the different things that can go into a relationship becoming abusive or there being intimate partner violence. So we're going to be looking at the use of threats or coercion, intimidation, um, emotional and economic abuse. We see that a lot. It's not always just physical, especially in the beginning. Maybe those can be a lot of red flags that might lead in a relationship to becoming physically abusive. Um, Male privilege. We also see more now white privilege and things like that too. Using children in controlling ways or gaslighting, emotionally abusive ways, minimizing and denying blame. Those can be like gaslighting and things like that too. I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z if you hadn't done A, B, or C. Um, so I just wanted to share this with you all too. Domestic violence is not caused by one thing. It's not caused by genetics, substance use, trauma, or behavior of the victim. Domestic violence is a choice. The batterer, the abusive partner chooses to use these tactics against another person, against their current or former partner. We categorize the abuse really into 4 main categories: physical, sexual, psychological, and financial. You all can see here for yourself. Physical, that's definitely, I think, what most people think of when they think of domestic violence, hitting, kicking, strangling, or choking. That's become a much bigger deal in the past few years. There's been new legislation about strangulation. Um, Physical could also include threats, the use of weapons, destroying property, injuring or threatening harm to pets, or denying medical treatment, either related to an injury caused by domestic violence or just medical neglect. Um, Sexual abuse would be like forcing sex. Even if someone's married, you can't force your spouse to have sex with you, or to do something that they don't want to do. Using non-consensual violence or name calling during sex, denying contraception or protection from STDs, or reproductive coercion, using threats or acts of violence in order, to sway reproductive health or decision making. Psychological abuse could be name calling, put downs, gaslighting, blame and isolation, accusations of cheating, just really anything that's gonna torment, maybe mentally torture a victim. And then financial is very common as well. There's an older statistic I didn't really include. It's like 99% of survivors of domestic violence have experienced some form of financial abuse. It could be withholding money, not sharing information about finances, banking information. We have accounts at X, Y, and Z bank, and here's that information. Here's how to access this money. Running up debt in victim's name or intentionally damaging their credit, interfering with employment. That's really common as well. Will intentionally try to get the survivor fired from their job. Um, or you just behaving in really erratic ways where the survivor, can't keep a job. Um, or forcing the victim to turn over disability benefits or other income to the abusive partner. One thing that we get asked a lot working in the domestic violence field is, why don't survivors just leave? It seems like maybe an easy question if it's not something that you've been through yourself, if it's not personal to you, if you don't know better. Um, if you're not happy, why don't you just leave? There's a lot of reasons survivors don't leave. Um, they love their partner for one reason or another. They started that relationship for a reason. They've stayed as long as they have for a reason. They think their partner can change. Maybe in the past it had gotten better. Maybe then it got worse again, but they knew that it had gotten better at one point. Their partner promises to change. Maybe they have children together and they want the children to be able to stay together. The idea of keeping the family together. There's always a fear of retaliation. And we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute too, but like, what would happen, if I left? Would I be safer if I left or not? The lack of support or the fear of being alone. A lot of the survivors that we see come through our programs have never lived alone. They don't know what it means to live alone. They don't know how to manage their own personal finances or their own housing or all kinds of things because they've just never done it by themselves before. It's common to have barriers like immigration status, racism, criminal history, or substance use that keep people where they are too. Um, we have there's shelter programs across the state for survivors, but not everybody is comfortable accessing those programs and those systems for some of those reasons and many others. And then fear of being outed, if they're in a same-sex relationship or there's another layer into their gender or sexual identity that they're not comfortable sharing with the rest of the world or other parts of their family or of their life. That can be really scary too. So we do know most survivors will escape and return or attempt to escape and return several times before they leave. Leaving's a process. It's not always just a one time, one day, make a decision and leave and don't come back. We do also know that Attempting to flee is the most dangerous time in a relationship. And that kind of goes back to that power and control. But when an abusive partner thinks that they are starting to lose control, that's when things can become really explosive and really, really dangerous. Um, so that's another reason, going back to retaliation and things like that, um, why somebody might be a little bit weary of trying to leave, or not just staying where they are. We know that 75% of domestic violence related homicides occur when the victim is fleeing. Um, so it's not always just easy as leaving one day. We know domestic violence can be deadly. Some of the risk factors that might increase a homicide to occur would be like having a firearm in the house, um, just the increased buildup of severity and frequency in the violence, attempting to flee, even recently, recent attempts, threats of death, threats or actual attempts of choking or strangulation, threats of suicide by the perpetrator. That's a pretty common tactic that we see, if you leave, I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to take my own life. And then threats to the children. At Zero B, we afford the presumption of innocence, worthiness, and competence to survivors. Survivors are innocent of the harm that happened to them. Survivors are worthy of the time, energy, and resources that staff, advocates, institutions, agencies have to offer. And survivors are competent to make decisions for their own lives, what's best for them and their family. So we'll talk about Zero V and our member programs. So get into a little bit more about who Zero V is and what it is that we do. So, as I said, we formerly were the Kentucky Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Nobody knew what KCADV was or did or meant. So, um, now we get to explain the same thing about what Zero V means, what Zero V does, but it's a little bit less of a mouthful, at least. We Our goal, we want to pursue creating safe lives and thriving futures for survivors across the state. Um, we want to ultimately work ourselves out of a job, is what we all kind of joke about. We want to end the domestic violence and other forms of violence. The V doesn't just have to stand for domestic violence. We want zero violence. Um, we'd all be happy to not have a job because there's no more survivors to serve. Everybody's good. Everybody's happy. Um, Staff at Zero B hold lots of different positions, can include lobbying and advocacy, both at the State House in Frankfurt and in DC. We write lots of policies and policy recommendations, do lots of trainings and technical assistance, both to community partners like you all, um, like housing providers, we do trainings for often, and to our member programs, which I'll share what that means in a minute. We have a really large housing team, which I'll talk about too. We oversee lots of different contracts, lots of finance work on our admin office and things like that. We are primarily an administrative office. There's very little direct service that we do. Any direct service that we do actually comes through our housing team. So, member programs. Across the state, there are 15 programs that are part of the Zero V Coalition. There's one in every ad district, which is area development district. Those are just different regions broken up and across the state. So uh, we serve across those 15 programs, we serve all 120 counties in the state. They all have a designated program local to them. We try to keep those roughly about an hour and a half from anywhere in the state. Anywhere somebody might be living, there is a domestic violence program in foreseeable distance to them. They offer a lot of variety of supports, but at least some of them go above and beyond doing lots of different kinds of programming. Some of our member programs have housing programs themselves, but kind of as just like a baseline, the member programs offer court advocacy, shelter, of course, for those who need and want it, counseling support groups, Some of them do actual like therapy and things, case management, safety planning, goal setting, referrals to the community. And then a lot of them do have prevention kinds of programming too and community outreach that the member programs do themselves. Here's a map of our programs. You can see how the state's broken up into regions. Um, you can certainly find this and any more information about our member programs on our website, or about your local member program. Um, I don't know. Whitney, I didn't ask like where everybody is based. Is everybody based like central Frankfurt area?
No, we're statewide. We've got
Cool.
a one of our members is as far away as Marshall County out in Western Kentucky,
Yeah.
and then we've got a couple folks over in Pike County. So
Nice.
spread around all over. Yeah.
Great. Well, then the map is helpful because you're not all gonna have the same local program and things like that. But our website is just zerob.org. You can find this and other resources if you want more information. Whitney can totally share my email address too if y'all have questions you don't want to ask, here at the end of our presentation. But um, we'll talk a little bit about housing. So, like I said, Zero B has a housing program. That's the team that I'm actually a part of. We are the largest team within the organization now. We have a lot of housing money and do a lot of housing work for survivors. Um, we know that survivors need housing. Um, there's a lot of statistics here about domestic violence impacting homelessness, and how many women and survivors experience homelessness in their life. Survivors have a lot of barriers when it comes to housing. I talked a minute ago about how a lot of survivors that we see have never lived alone before. Maybe they've never even had a lease in their name. They don't have a credit score. They've not been allowed to have opportunities to build their credit, or they have really bad credit because of financial abuse tactics and things like that. Um, so housing can be really hard for a lot of reasons. They don't have money for a security deposit, um, all kinds of things like that. There are housing protections for survivors. So the Violence Against Women Act offers lots of protections for survivors of domestic violence, or VAWA covers a few different crimes as well. They cover domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, stalking, and dating violence. Um, these protections are specific to somebody in federally assisted housing. So if your landlord is taking money from Section 8, from HUD, from an income-based property, a project-based property, something like that, that's federal assistance. And then these protections can be afforded to that survivor, to that victim. Um, it can allow a a survivor to separate the lease from their perpetrator. Either one of them can choose to leave. The landlord can bar a perpetrator from the unit if the survivor is able to manage and afford that unit on their own, or vice versa. They can separate, they can take the victim off of that lease agreement. She can be out on her own. In programs like ours, we serve survivors who have already fled. They are already separated from their abuser. And it's not unusual that we have someone who gets found, who their perpetrator locates them. Maybe there's an attempt assault, or breaks down their door or something. They're no longer safe. So what VAWA can provide too is an emergency transfer. So we can relocate them. They can break their lease without penalty, start a new lease somewhere else with the same or a different landlord. However, that works best for the survivor. Um, and a lot of things like that. VAWA is a really important aspect in housing for survivors. There is a state protective law too. This is not specific to that federal. the federal assisted housing. So anybody across the state of Kentucky could access this. There's a few more kind of hoops to jump through than VAWA has, but it does still protect landlords from refusing to rent to someone because they're a victim or evicting someone because of their victim status. It allows tenants to change the locks of a unit. The only thing that's a little bit different about this one is that you do have to have a protective order or some kind of court order kind of showing your victim status. VAWA is a self-certification. All you have to say is, I'm a victim, I'm a survivor. And they're like, okay, sounds good. This one you do have to have the court order, which not everybody wants to do for multiple reasons, but it's still something that is can be really helpful for someone that's not receiving that federal assistance. Um, Responses to domestic violence. So as a society, I don't we're not really we don't have a great response. You know, we have shelters, we kind of um look at the problem a little bit more on the other end of it. Um, there's no real great way that we've been able to stop it altogether. There's lots of really great, cool prevention programs and education and training and things like that, but we know that it keeps happening. So as a society, you know, the primary responses that we see is we ignore the root of the problem. We treat survivors, we work with survivors and support the victims, um, and we kind of forget about those maybe who are using violence, or and why. We incarcerate people who are struggling, you know, force more people into the criminal justice system, which is already imbalanced, it's already full and maybe not working how it should. Um, we also at Zero V can invest in families. One of the teams through Zero V is a batter intervention team. They work with, they try, you know, the goal is working with survivors, serving survivors, providing services to survivors and their families by working with the people who abuse, people who cause harm. Um, I'll tell you a little bit more about that on the next slide, but the goal of the batterer intervention team is to provide the offenders who use violence and opportunity skills to change behavior and beliefs that have led to committing violence against their partner in the past. Oops. Why can't I change my slide now? There we go. Okay, so Zero V oversees a network of 66 providers. These are certified mental health providers, um, therapists, doctors who provide the batterer intervention services. Zero V sets the standard for these domestic violence classes. It's what's known more in the community. Um, and then we handle complaints and grievances about these providers. Um, the batterer intervention individuals will hold these scheduled classes. Um, Sometimes they're voluntary. The majority of the participants in these classes are referred by a judge or by, you know, another referral source. So somebody that maybe the victim has a protective order out. There's a, you know, a restraining order is what some people know it as. But the protective order, and then the judge who signed that said, okay, and the person that's caused this harm, the person that we're protecting you from, has to do these classes. So these classes, the duration of them and length can be kind of set from the referral source. Um, and so then the providers themselves, these mental health providers who are certified by Zero V, will hold these classes and enroll the batterers or the you know, abusers in the classes and provide the structure. Every week is a different, or every class is a different theme. All of these are things that are set by Zero V. I usually have somebody from our BIP team do this part of the presentation, so this is the first time I've actually gone through it myself. But if you have more questions about, this part of what Zero V does or anything, I'd be happy to put you in touch with somebody on that team. Um, so BIP, what can BIP do for my community? You can definitely check out Zero V's website for more information. I'm happy to share or connect anybody with somebody on that team, but it's important to know that batterer intervention is not the same as anger management. We all get angry. We all have feelings. We all have emotions. It's about what we choose to do when we're having those feelings, what we do are doing in that moment, as opposed to, you know, somebody who might need anger management comes in and assaults their boss. Their boss says something unkind. That might be somebody who is angry at everybody all the time. Somebody that comes to a batterer intervention, their boss is going to say they're a great employee. Their parents are going to say they're a great husband. But what's happening at home is telling a different story. So that's kind of where we see the difference between somebody who needs batterer intervention or gets referred to batterer intervention compared to somebody who maybe just has like an anger problem. Um, so yes, batterer intervention. Please let me know if you have more questions about that and I can connect you all. Um, Protective orders. We'll talk just a little bit about protective orders. There's two different types. A domestic violence order can be filed against a spouse or an ex-spouse, can be filed by a family member of a victim against that abuser. We also have interpersonal protective orders, which are for non-married relationships, dating relationships, or somebody who's been a victim of sexual assault or stalking. For either of those, they can be filed at any circuit court clerk, any of our member programs can help, victims file one of these. Um, I would reach out to your specific local office for more information about when, who, where, and those kinds of specifics. But um, anybody can file one of those, locally to them. There is no cost to file. Um, and once a petition is filed, it goes before a judge. The judge will decide if the emergency protective order or the temporary interpersonal protective order is issued. Once that's issued, another court date will be set. The perpetrator or the other party will be notified that this was filed. They'll serve that order, and then the court date happens. The judge, sometimes people have lawyers, sometimes they don't. This is not a criminal ordeal though. So like you don't necessarily get a court appointed attorney like you would for something criminal. Um, we see that a lot of maybe the perpetrators have resources to hire a lawyer. Sometimes victims don't. So we definitely do see that imbalance, but that's one place where I mean our programs can help and can help get attorneys through like legal aid and things. And so during the hearing, the judge will hear out both parties and determine whether or not the more long-term domestic violence order or the interpersonal order will be granted. Those can last generally up to about 3 years, and depending on what happens between in that time, can be extended. Okay, and then there are some ways, to file a criminal court case or for domestic violence to become criminal. It's not that common, really, that they do. It's hard to prove a lot of domestic violence related offenses. Um, Become kind of a he said, she said, which is hard. There's not a specific crime like domestic violence assault in Kentucky. I don't know if other states have like specifically domestic violence related charges. We don't here. So a person who commits a domestic violence crime assaulting a current or former partner can be charged with misdemeanor assault. For just a standard assault. I shared a little bit about strangulation has kind of become a new charge and as a felony, I think. And then other types of assault or other types of crimes, can be added onto that, but it really varies. And it's not very often that those result in convictions. But we do see it sometimes. It's there as an option. So that's what I have. What questions do you all have for me? No questions. Nobody has anything to say. Well, my email is right here. Feel free to write this down if you have a question that you don't want to ask right now. Um, Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to point you in a direction of somebody that might be able to answer your question if it's not my expertise. But just yeah, let me know. Let me know what you need. Let me know what Zero V can do. Or if y'all have any questions.
Thank you, Carol. Give one more second if anybody has a question.
I won't get mad if you disagree or don't understand, whatever. I'm not gonna get mad. I like to hear from you all about your experiences or how it has impacted your work and things like that. Um, do you have a question?
Yeah, when you had said something about the that Kentucky doesn't have like the DV charges.
Uh-huh.
Um, so and I was wondering because I've seen a lot of like either screenshots of people's like court records and things like that, and it'll say assault, and then in like parentheses or like as like a sub whatever, it'll say domestic violence.
Okay.
Okay. And so like I've started seeing that in like the last little bit, so I didn't know if that's a new thing, if that's like actually falling under domestic violence, or if they're just like putting it as like a descriptor. But I've seen it on like court stuff, like on people's like charges.
It sounds like it's probably just a descriptor. Um, that would not be my necessarily area of expertise. So it could also just be something that's new. I'm really not sure. I think that that's a good thing. Maybe that they're, having this descriptor um in there. So that's interesting. I appreciate you letting me know. Well, I will let you all get to your meeting if nobody has anything else for me. Thanks again for letting me attend and um, share a little bit about our work and things. And please, yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or want more information about anything that I shared.
Thank you, Carol. Appreciate you being
Yes,
here.
no problem. Y'all have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, y'all. Let me share my screen real quick. Um, okay. So, um, I'll share as we follow up as we finish today. I'll send out if Carol's willing to share her slides, I'll send those or whatever she wants me to share with you. But I think most everything is on the Zero V website, and then I'll share her contact information as well. So I'll try to go quickly because I know this might be a little bit longer of a check-in meeting that we've had the last couple months. So if you all want to type into the chat something good that's happened over since we met last month, and maybe we can just read that instead of sharing out this month. But I don't want to skip that because I always like hearing what good has happened, and I'll share mine. We were able to submit our grant application for our next year funding, and so that was something nice to get off the check off list for this last week. So that was my good thing to share. Um, I do want to remind everybody we're a little bit past the deadline for the mid-year evaluation. So if you're a site supervisor or you have not completed your mid-year evaluation, just log into your America Learns account and make sure that you've completed that. That's on my to-do list for this week is to just double check for folks. I'll reach out to you independently if I haven't gotten those. And I want to look at the chats. Tyra said that started the first 24/7 accessible food pantry in Butler County. That's awesome. Madeline booked her wedding venue. That's exciting. Sonnet bought a new violin bow, needed a new one for years. You gotta do what you gotta do to get yourself where you need to be. So thank you all for sharing, and y'all keep them coming if there's good things that you're working on. Wedco got reaccredited, getting more naloxone boxes across the counties. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Alina. Um, all right, y'all keep typing. Noah says Mercer County Health Department received a grant to promote breast cancer screening. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Okay, I'm going to keep the CHW certification application update on here. This is not really, it's not new from the last meeting, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So this is the email that you got if you were already certified from last year. So this is not new. I just want to make sure that our folks who were certified last year have gotten their Certimi account going. If you need help with this, if you were certified last year, please reach out to me and let me know if you have questions, if you're having any issues. But also, you've got email addresses and webpage links, what have you, to reach out to as well. So I will troubleshoot as best I can. You are also your each other's resources as well. If you went through training with somebody last year and you feel comfortable reaching out, you've got email addresses of each other on the monthly member check-ins. You've got everybody's email address. So if you want to reach out to each other, please do. Or if you want to type into the chat if you've got a question, if you want to unmute yourself if you've got a question right now, please do that. The links that I've got on here that you now have in your email from having this agenda, that PowerPoint overview that came in the January update from the Kentucky Office of Community Health Workers is really helpful. So the PowerPoint and then also the Zoom recording from January is really helpful. So if you're new to certification this year, or if you need to just get your account renewed, those are both really helpful. Craig, go ahead. Just if you want to unmute yourself, ask your
Okay,
question.
on my CERTME, it says I have no active credentials, but when I click show all, it has my CHW profile and it just says status in process, number to be determined, expiration date to be determined. And I don't know why it's not showing active. It's been like that since I've created the account and finished everything.
Okay. Do you happen to have your certification from when you got it last year? Like a copy of it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Why
Yes.
don't you why don't you email me and that the chw.certification@ky.gov and say that and say, is there something I need to do to make sure this is up to date? And
Okay.
let's see what response we get.
Okay, I will do. I'll let you know.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions or any similar issues if you are already certified? Are you having that same issue? Okay. I know we've got some folks who are finished with training but have the mental health first aid training to get through. So you might be getting ready to use that mentorship tracking form. So there's a link to that on there. All these things are on the Kentucky Office of Community Health Workers webpage, but if you just need a reminder, if you need anything, just reach out to me. And just want to make sure everybody's staying on track and have the tools that they need so that you don't fall behind as you're moving into the into spring and into summer. Just want to make sure everybody's got what they need. These the next part here, letter C, also not new from last month. Just wanted to leave them on here in case these were helpful, because I know some folks that are looking for recertification were asking about what classes on Train Kentucky were for sure going to get you CEUs. So these are some of those lists that one of our members, maybe a couple members, had shared with us that they were able to get their CEUs virtually from Train Kentucky. So those are still on there if that's helpful for you. Um, we have a couple of in-person or sort of in person trainings coming up. That Kentucky Voices for Health, Thrive Kentucky, those are virtual, but they're free CEUs. If you register and put in your information, you can get a CEU that way. The KPHA conference is coming up. We can't cover costs for that, but if your health department wants to send you and can help you with costs, that can be helpful for you. That Kentucky Overdose Prevention Summit, registration for that is live. I'm sure it will fill up. It has filled up in previous years. It's in Louisville this year. It was in Lexington last year. Again, we can't cover the costs for it, but if you are able to go, if your health department can send you, then that is a way you can get CEUs as well. Oh, is it full already? Okay. Like registration just opened up maybe yesterday, Monday. So I knew it filled up really fast. So if you got in, great. I'm sorry if you didn't. And there will probably be some spots that open up because as they get closer to the date, I think they check back in to see if folks can't go, and that there will probably be some folks that cancel registration.
Hey Whitney,
Yeah.
I'm going to the KPHA meeting, but or the conference, and I wanted to let others know too that my school at Western, they're paying for me to stay in a hotel the night before and like the drive up there and a meal. So I didn't know if anybody else was like in a college and surrounding areas, and maybe talk to your school about paying for you to go because they'll probably pay for you to go because Western paid for me, and I think they're also paying for Peter to go as well too.
Okay,
So
awesome. I'm glad to know. Is it so Tyra and Peter, is anybody else going to KPHA?
I'm going. They also
Okay.
have through KY the place. Anyways, they do hotel like assistance and stuff. That's what I'm doing. I'm staying in a hotel, but it's like through them. So you just call them, or I guess you can email. I called them though, and they booked it for you, and you get a discount. You still have to pay, but it's not as much, and it's like right next to like the hotel's next to the convention center and all that fun stuff. So it's easier, hopefully, but.
Okay, awesome.
And then also for the actual day of student day, I emailed them and they aren't doing CEUs for that day. But the conference itself has CEUs. But if you're just going for the student day, we don't get CEUs for that,
Mm,
is what I got when I emailed about it. So
okay, hmm. I didn't realize that. That's odd. I wonder.
I agree. I'm not a fan, but
Hmm. Well, I'll be there. So if there's anything I can do to help, and come see me, we'll have the CADA, the Health Department Association table, and that's where I'll be most of the time. So come see me and at the conference. And if we can figure out that CEU thing, let's try to do that. Because that seems not fair. Um, any other thoughts, comments about any of those in-person or virtual CEUs? Okay. Couple of in-person and just upcoming things. Sorry, I know that I don't have my screen's kind of weird. Okay, in person or sorry, virtual one-on-one check-ins for the month of April. So we did these, I'm trying to do these every 3 months just to check in with you guys one-on-one. If you can start scheduling these for a time that works best for you, it can be phone call, it can be Zoom, it doesn't matter, whatever you want to do. I don't have a preference. I just want to start getting them scheduled for beginning March 30th. I'm unavailable for the whole week of April 13th. I'm at a conference. So it's the same link that's in my email signature, but you've got the link there too. Again, this agenda's in your email. So just click to schedule whatever works for you, as long as it's by the end of April. The Serve Kentucky member roundtables, if you're a returning member, you may remember these from last year. So Serve Kentucky likes to meet with you all without us as program staff around. So they want to hear what your experience has been like, what you might like differently, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And again, it's a chance to talk without your direct program staff around. So I have put the locations on here and who I think is closest and might be able to go. So I'm giving you a heads up that I'm going to reach out to you on an email and give you more details. So let me know if if this day is going to work. So for our folks in Eastern Kentucky, I don't think Hyman's really it doesn't seem worth it to travel to Hindman. You all can I mean, just tell me now, I guess. I guess I'm just gonna poll you right now. If you're in Kentucky River District, Pike County, I looked at a map and I did the mileage, and it just doesn't seem like it's really worth it to travel from where you guys are to Hindman. Do you all feel differently? Do you feel strongly? Do you want to travel to Hindman? If you say nothing, I'm gonna assume that's a no. So I might still reach out to you all that are Eastern Kentucky folks if you really want to go, but I don't have an expectation because it seemed like it was at least an hour for you all to travel. Um, okay. This was not this member assistance program update. I did just get an email about it, so I want to make sure we cover it just really quickly. The Member Assistance Program is a program that is offered through AmeriCorps. If you think back to one of our member check-ins, maybe back in November is when we talked about it. So again, I'll recap this in our follow-up when we finish today, but there have been a couple updates. There's a new portal. If you want to learn more via video, there's a link to a video there. But this is just it's nothing super new. It's just they've kind of updated how you access the portal. So it's available to you and all members in your household. So it's mental health support for you as an AmeriCorps member and then any members in your household. So I know we've had some folks that have come on board after that last member update or monthly member check-in and training that we had when we first talked about member assistance program through AmeriCorps. So just if you need a refresher, you can go back to that monthly member training again. I think it was in November, but this is available to you as a member, and I'll share the update email that I got from the MAP program is what they call it. Any questions about this or anything else before we finish? Okay, y'all. I won't keep you if we don't have anything. I'm gonna stop recording and stop sharing my screen. I'll hang out for just a couple minutes if anybody wants to stay on and ask any questions. But That's all I got. Thank you all. Stay weather aware and have a great rest of your week.